Hey lovelies, it's MLP with Lovely Lulu Designs, and in this video I will show you how I make the magnetic removable ice lid toppers. For this project I used UV resin magnets, irregular cut acrylic vase fillers in various sizes, and fake fruit pieces. As always, I will link the materials I used to create the lid topper in the description section of this video. Each project I make, I learn something new from, and these lid toppers are no exception to that rule, so you will see me do some problem solving in this tutorial as well. For my Canadian and US viewers, I also wanted to announce that I am running a summer sale on my website, www.lovelyluludesigns.com. From now until August 31st, 2021, I am running a buy one, get one 50% off on all of my digital files. Unfortunately, this only applies to my website and not my Etsy store. Etsy doesn't allow BOGO sales and also has higher fees, so I can't run the same sales on both platforms, but I will be running sales intermittently on Etsy this summer as well. If you want to be updated on sales and new design releases, be sure to either subscribe to my website's newsletter or join my Facebook group, Lovely Creations. Both my website and the Facebook group will be linked down below as well. Those are all the announcements I have for you, so without any further ado, let's get started. This is basically going to be a two-part video tutorial. This is going to be the first part where I'm going to be focusing on the removable ice lid topper for your tumbler. The other part is going to be me showing you how I do the marble lemonade vodka zipper split tumbler, so I'm going to do that tutorial next, but I wanted to start off with just the lid topper itself because it is a bit in-depth as well. So basically, this is not a concept that is unique to me. These lid toppers that are removable with magnets, I have seen them floating around, and I also watched a tutorial by Damn Fancy Creations. I believe it was the ice cream scoop one that I had watched with her where she did the magnetic removable lid topper, but it was a really great video, so I am going to link it here as well if you want to check it out and see how she did hers, or even just to support another great tutorial channel. It'll be in the description section of this video as well. So we're going to be starting off today by doing these lid toppers with the crushed ice look, and I like to split my lemon. So the way that I make these is I do it on a base with using a coaster mold. So my coaster mold is this one here. I really like this one. It's from Cat Glitter Factory. The reason why I really like it is because it has different size coaster molds in here. So you know, if you're going to be using a 30-ounce tumbler or a kid-size tumbler, you don't have to buy a whole bunch of different molds for it. This one has all the different sizes on it, which I think is really great. So the way that I measured how to know which size I wanted was I basically just took my lid. I'm going to be doing this one for a wine tumbler, just for purposes of this video today. And what I did was I basically just sort of popped this on the back to kind of see which one fits. This one was way too big, this one was too big, and I really liked the small size on it here. Then what I did was I kind of lined it up on the top, and just using a Sharpie, once I had it sort of lined, I put some dots on the back with the Sharpie to kind of give me an idea of where I want to place my magnets, because I'm going to be embedding the magnets in the epoxy itself. So I kind of wanted to avoid putting the magnets on the track, so then that way if I'm going to be including the lid slider piece with the lids for the tumblers when I do ship them out. So this way if they want to remove the ice topper and they just want to use it as a closable lid, they can. So my magnets I got off of Amazon, and I'm going to be using two different sizes. The first size I'm going to be doing are the ones that are actually going to be embedded in the epoxy, and those are the 6mm by 3mm. They're a little bit deeper, and I'm also going to be putting a thinner magnet on the back, so that would be on here just to give it a little bit of extra stability. These magnets are 1mm in depth. They're not as strong as the 3mm ones, which is why I really only use it at the back to stabilize. I don't use it on the whole thing, but it does just give it a little bit of extra grip on there, so it's not clacking away or risking falling off when you are using it. So I got both of these size magnets from Amazon.ca, so I will be linking them in the YouTube description below as well. Also, when I place my magnets, I do use a plastic tweezer set. I'm kind of fumbly when it comes to my fingers, and I have a hard time placing it exactly sort of where I want to put it. So I did pick some of these up from Amazon as well, which I will also link, but these are totally optional. You can just use your fingers as well. You might have better success with that than I have. Like I said, I'm a little bit clumsy and fumbly when I do those types of things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cut my lemon slice. So this is optional. If you want, you can use the full lemon slice. I like the look of the half slice. So I'm just going to show you how I do mine that way. So these lemon slices have a hole somewhere, which allows air to kind of escape. It kind of lets the plastic piece air out. So I usually find that hole, and that's where I use it to sort of help guide me to cut. And I just take a pair of scissors and I just start cutting through my lemon piece. And then just for that last little bit, I'll come through on the other side. And as you can see, it's got some jagged edges, so I just kind of come back in with my scissors and kind of clean those up a little bit so there's no sharp bits. So you can see there's a jagged edge right there. Another one right here. And I just kind of clean up my cut. I don't want to leave it open like this because it looks kind of cheapish. So what I want to do is I want to fill it with some UV resin. And when I first filled it, I wasn't sure if it would look good or not, but I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but I'm going to try. So this one here is already filled with the UV resin. And one of the things that I did notice between the two slices is that the one that's filled actually looks juicier. It gave it almost more clarity, and it looked a lot nicer, and it looked, like I said, just juicier in general. So it was really the way that I like to do this. So that's what I'm going to be doing with this guy here. I'm just going to be filling it up with some UV resin. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place my magnets into my mold. All right, so now that I've got that in there, I'm going to just start pouring in my epoxy. I don't want to fill my molds completely because I don't want it to be that thick. But I do want to make sure that I'm getting all the way around the magnet. You can use the UV resin for this. The reason why I don't use the UV resin for it is because I find whenever I demold it, it is a little bit, it doesn't feel as strong. It's a little bit more flexible. And I just personally like the base of it to be the artist resin, and I have time. If I was in a pinch, I would probably just use the UV resin for the base, but I have time right now, so I'm going to show you how I prefer to do it. And now that I've got it in there, I'm just going to take a little bit of alcohol and I'm just going to give a couple spritz to help pop any bubbles that are in there. I'm going to take my nail lamp, so this is the UV light. And again, I got this from Amazon. This is a 120 watt nail lamp. And I also have this little guy here, which came with a little drill set that I have, which I kind of like because it just lets me sort of place it straight and it holds it without me having to put my hand underneath the nail lamp every time. So I just kind of like it, but you can definitely use something else or even just your hands. But I like the ease of not having to use my hands, so I have this. So I will link it as well, but again, totally not necessary. And for this, I'm going to be using the UV resin, which is also available from M&Cat Glitter Factory. It comes with this nice little tip here, which allows you to sort of fill the space quite cleanly, which I really like. One thing I do want to mention is that whenever you're working with resins and you're working with UV resin especially, it has a very strong smell to it. You do want to use a mask that is good for organic vapors. I'm not using them only because when I record, I have a hard time speaking and I find that it's not clear what I'm saying. But traditionally, I always wear a mask, especially when I'm working with this stuff. It does give me headaches. It does have some high fumes, so always be careful. I do have a link about masks and epoxy safety for a video that I've done earlier, which I will share here as well in case you're interested in seeing what kind of masks that you're going to need to look for. But here I have the UV resin, and I'm just going to start by adding a small amount in the bottom. And I'm just gonna pop it under my light and I'm gonna let it sit there for about 15 seconds. I'm not gonna do a ton. I'm just gonna kind of add a little bit, cure for a little while, add a little bit, cure for a while, until I get to the end where I'll do a full cure on it. So for my last little piece of the layer, I'm just going to go on with a thin coat of the UV resin just to top it up. And now I'm going to slide it in, and I'm going to allow it to go to the end of its timer. So I think it's like 120 seconds or 200 seconds or something like that. So I'm just going to let it go all the way to the end, and then I will consider this to be done. The epoxy has fully hardened in my mold, so I'm just going to pop it out carefully. And when I look at it, I see I had a little bit of debris in the mold before I poured it, so I probably should have cleaned it out first, and there are some bubbles in it. Not a big deal though, because we are going to be decorating it. One of the things you'll notice when you pull your mold out is the epoxy underneath the magnet. It actually does kind of go between the magnet and the silicone mold, so there is a very, very thin layer of epoxy that's sort of covering that magnet. And you might think logically that that would make this part here the top because it has some epoxy covering it, and this part here I didn't pour enough really to fully encase these magnets. However, even though it does have that thin layer of epoxy on it, the magnets still work, so I'm not too concerned about that. So what I'm gonna do, you can see here it's got still really good adhesion there. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to be using this part here, which was the top part of the mold, because I don't know if you can see it, but there is a little bit of a lip here, and I find that it kind of acts as a bit of a bowl almost to help me catch my UV resin, so it kind of helps preventing spilling over. So that's kind of like why I use it in that direction, but you can do whatever works for you. So again, I did not fill my mold all the way up. I only partially filled it. I find that they are too thick if I fill them all the way to the top. I did it about, I meant to do 3/4 of the way, or sorry, half the way. I kind of did closer to 3/4 of the way. So this one is a little bit thicker than what I intended, but it's a good solid base for my mold. And just to make sure that we have the right size, I have my lid here and I pop it on, and we can see here that it fits perfectly, and the magnets were in a good place for that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to adhere the magnets onto the lid part here first before I start decorating this lid. And the reason for that is because I want to kind of have that already predetermined before I start adding my decorations, just to make sure that I'm not putting them in a place where it's going to maybe not work with where the straw is going to go. So I'm going to start by taking my magnets, to flip that one upside down. Sorry, I'm using gloves and they make it a little bit not as easy. All right, so I've got my magnets there, and I'm just going to kind of place it here just first to get a general idea of where I kind of want it to go, and that looks good. So I'm lining up that half moon with the straw, so then that way the straw has a place to go through. This is nice because you get to skip that spilling, or the drilling step, sorry. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be just putting a little bit of UV resin on here, and I'm just going to kind of tack this into place. The nice thing about everything being clear, like the lids being clear and this being clear, is that the UV will penetrate through and it will work as an adhesive, so you don't have to worry about waiting for like glue time or anything like that. So what I've done is I've just popped the magnets on the back, and I'm just going to take my UV resin and I'm going to put a dab on each one. And when working with UV resin, again, you want to be protecting yourself with gloves. You really want to protect your skin. It's not the nicest stuff to get on you. So I'm just going to kind of carefully place it. It's okay if I move it around a little bit. And now I'm just going to pop it underneath my light. Okay, so I did it for 30 seconds. Now what I want to do is I want to flip it over, because this is the part I really want to concentrate that UV on to set the resin. Now what I want to do is, I find that it's okay right now, but when you start adding the weight of everything else on here, what I find that happens is it kind of starts to clack like that a little bit. So what I like to do is I do add some magnets onto the back section as well. So I want to try to avoid getting them on the part where the slider would go. So I try to place them just slightly above the slider. I'm using my 1mm magnet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my UV resin, and I will put a small dab of it right there on the back of that magnet. Probably should have used the tweezers again because of my fumbly fingers. just gonna put it into place and let that cure again. So the reason why I'm doing it for 30 seconds on the one side first is just to kind of make sure it tacks into place, and then I do for the full cure underneath because this is the side that I really want to make sure is getting the UV light. So I'm going to let it run its full cycle once again. And our top magnet is going to be the easiest magnet of them all. We're just going to put a little bit of UV resin right there on the top and make sure you've got it the right way and put it in. And again, I'm going to let it run its full cycle. That might be overkill, but I would rather have, especially when we're talking about the magnets that are going to be keeping that lid on, I would rather have too much than not enough. So I just let it run the full cycle, and then I move on to decorating the next part. After recording my last video, I realized I had technical difficulties and it didn't actually work out for me, so I ended up having to go back, and now I'm going to be re-recording this for you. So what I ended up doing was, luckily I needed to make some more lids. I did make another topper base out of, this time, the UV resin, so you can see the difference. So one of the things I don't like about the UV resin is I find it doesn't come out as clear. It's because when I cured it, it still stayed a little bit sticky on the bottom, so it has like divots from like my fingerprints from demolding it and that type of thing. But I did try embedding that third magnet in it just to sort of see, and it actually does hold. I wasn't sure because, like I mentioned, these magnets are a little bit weaker, but it does seem to hold quite well. So I added on my mold just a third spot there where I'm going to be putting that last magnet, and I'm going to be embedding them in future, so definitely do give that a go. So I've got my mold here, my bottom, and what I'm going to be doing is I start with my fruit. So I like to have a little piece of parchment paper, so then that way if it drips, it's just dripping on the parchment paper, not all over my desk. And I'm going to be starting with my lemon slice, and I'm going to take some of that UV resin and I'm just going to draw a line. And I'm gonna pop it on right about here, and I'm just gonna put it underneath the light. And at this point, I'm only gonna be sort of tacking it on, so I'm only gonna be waiting for about 15 seconds before I pull it out. And then I'm going to tack on the strawberry next, and I'm gonna be doing it right next to it. Okay, so that's on there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add my strawberry piece. So I'm gonna do the same kind of thing, and this time I'm gonna make enough that it kind of comes out around the side, so it's going to squish some of that UV resin out. And the reason for that is because you're not going to get the resin, the UV light is not going to be able to penetrate the strawberry, so I'm not really going to get as good of a seal on it with this. So I'm just going to try to tack it a little bit first before I flip it upside down so it's not running all over the place, and then I'm going to flip it upside down. Oh, didn't really work too well. Okay, and I'm going to put it underneath the light. Okay, so that's a good start right there. Now what I want to do is I can start filling in some of these areas with some ice. I'm going to be taking these irregular pieces of acrylic vase fillers, which kind of look like ice. I'm just going to pour a bunch out, and I'm going to take my UV resin, and I'm just going to kind of put a nice little coat of the resin on the bottom. And now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to just start taking some pieces of ice and filling it. So I do like to start with some of the larger pieces of the ice at first. And I also like to have ice hanging over the sides of the lid a little bit. It gives it a bit more of a realistic look. But I want to be careful that I'm leaving it clear where my straw is going to go, which is in that sort of U-shaped cutout. So just kind of go around, putting some pieces down, kind of playing between the different sizes. And I really love that we have all these mixed sizes to sort of kind of make it look more like it's actual crushed ice. I'm gonna grab some more larger pieces. And then maybe put a couple smaller pieces here and there to sort of fill some of those other pieces. And you can always go back and fill them later. You know what, I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna leave what I have here. And I'm gonna put it under for about 30 seconds this time. Just because it's my base, so I wanna make sure that I have some good adhesion right now. Okay, so now I'm gonna pull that out and I'm gonna just sort of do a quick look around and see sort of where I can maybe add some more ice on the edges. And I'm thinking right along here, I can put in some more ice. So what I'm gonna start doing now is I'm just gonna start kind of filling, and I wanna work quickly because like I said, this stuff's really runny until it's been cured. And it's very easy for it to sort of run down and drip down onto the other side. So I'm gonna work fast. I'm going to just sort of put a little bit of resin in, put my stones on or my acrylic pieces on, and then just put it under the light for 15 seconds, just long enough for it to hold its form and not run around and drip out the other sides. And I'm also going to be avoiding touching areas where I've just put the resin on, for the simple reason that you're gonna leave, it's gonna make it, it's gonna take away the glossiness, it's gonna give it a matte look then. I can gloss it up at the end, but whatever I can make easier for myself, I do try to do that. So I'm not going to touch it unless I absolutely have to, and I'm just gonna sort of be aware. I want to make sure when I'm making my lid toppers that I'm not leaving any holes where water can get in when it's being cleaned and kind of get trapped and not dry properly. That is absolutely what we don't want, because then you're going to have customers who are going to start having mold issues. So I'm going to kind of go around and sort of fill in the areas, make sure that the bottom layer is sealed and that there's no holes. And then I'll show you guys the next layer that I put on. So one of the things that happened is the part where the straw is going to go in that I really wanted to be careful with, that didn't fill in with some of the stones. I ended up having some of the resin drip into. So what I'm going to do is, this is another reason why I sort of do the tacky, like the tack instead of going for full cure, is I'm just going to kind of come in. You want to take maybe like a sharp X-Acto knife, or if you have a Dremel or something and you want to saw it out, and I'm just going to very carefully cut that little piece away, so then that way my my straw won't be blocked. Once you are fully happy with everything, with your shape and whatnot, you got to go through and you have to look for any type of dulling where maybe you handled the epoxy before it had a chance to fully harden. So I have a spot here where it's looking a little bit dull, and then I'm also going to want to just sort of go over one more time, make sure that absolutely every single thing is sealed, there's no holes, and I've already kind of done that. I'm pretty happy and pretty confident with it. So my main thing right now is just going to be to add a little bit more UV resin onto some of the acrylic pieces where I'd maybe handled it and it doesn't look super glossy anymore. And I'm just tacking that section. I'm holding on to the lid by the fruit, so then that way I don't accidentally touch any of this that I've only tacked and haven't fully cured. And now I'm just going to go over the top part one last time. This is going to help give it a look like the ice is sort of melting together, and it's also going to just get me that final glossy, nice coat from the top. All right. I'm going to put it under, and now I'm going to let it run for its full curing cycle. And I'm actually going to have it run through twice just to make sure, because I really don't want to have any issues with it now, because I don't want to have to be putting more epoxy on it if I don't have to on the top part. So still holding it by the fruit because it might still be soft since it's still hot. I want to just flip it upside down and sort of address the bottom part. As I mentioned, I had to cut, and as you saw, I had to cut away a little piece here. So just to kind of help that blend in a little bit more, I'm just going to take some of the UV resin, and I'm just going to add just like a light layer of it. And I'm just going to use my finger to kind of... Honey, not right now. I'm recording. Thank you. I'm recording, honey. Sweetheart, I'm recording, okay? Ask me in a minute. Dorian, ask me in a minute. I will open my door when I'm ready, honey. Sorry about that, guys. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put it underneath the light again for 2 cycles, really make sure that it fully cures, and that's going to help to sort of hide away the fact that I had to cut sort of part of that and kind of re-gloss out that bottom. So everything on the lid now is fully hardened and cured. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys it on the tumbler lid. Now, one of the things I want to mention, because I'm going to be totally honest with you guys, we all make mistakes. As I was going around and doing this, I had a little bit too much buildup on the epoxy around the sides, and some of the cubes as well were a little bit dipping too low on my lid. So what I ended up doing was I added a second magnet so it would sit higher, so I had a better connection there, which kind of defeats the purpose of embedding it, but it looks better with it being straight than what it did before. So that's the route that I decided to go. So that's it on the tumbler. I think it turned out really cute. I'm going to show you one on a completed tumbler as well. This is going to be the next tutorial I'm going to be doing. Is I'm going to be showing you guys how I'm going to make this, although I'm going to do it on this shaped tumbler instead. So it will be the marble with the front and back design and the zipper. So this is the premium vodka and the strawberry lemonade. So I will be back shortly with my next video on how to do this design on this tumbler. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please support me by giving it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, please click my logo to subscribe and tickle that little notification bell so you'll be notified of future videos. You can also check out more of my videos by clicking on one of the thumbnails on the right or by scrolling through my playlists. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be back for more tumbler tips and tutorials.